I arrived in Gideon's Hollow with a satchel of dental tools and a vow to stop pain wherever it lodged its fangs. The first face I saw belonged to the town hangman, a man so tall he seemed to stoop beneath his own grief. His name was Jeremiah Creed, and children whispered he had not smiled since the day he took up his father's awful rope. He watched me set up my chair in the saloon corner, his eyes the color of old regret and fresh curiosity together. I expected grimness, but when an old homesteader needed a cracked tooth pulled, Jeremiah quietly handed me a bottle of laudanum. That night I followed a lantern glow to a shed behind the gallows and found him carving tiny teeth from walnut wood. He froze, caught, then spoke his first full sentence. "I make smiles for folks who can't pay your kind of bill." He showed me a drawer of perfect dentures, each set carved to fit a specific mouth he'd studied while they begged for mercy. I realized this hangman measured condemned men not for the noose but for the replacement teeth they'd need after the undertaker finished. I sat on his workbench and whispered, "You are the most confusing, beautiful soul I have ever encountered on this earth." He carved while we talked, shaving curls of pine for a widow who lost her molars during a winter of starvation alone. His hands shook when he described the innocent man he hanged before a last-minute pardon arrived, and his voice cracked like flint. I placed my own hand over his trembling one and said, "I pull rotten teeth, but you pull guilt. We are healers both." The next Sunday, he let me assist as he delivered a carved set to a weather-beaten rancher who couldn't chew beef anymore. The man wept when his new teeth fit, and Jeremiah's lips twitched upward for the briefest, most radiant second of existence. I started teaching him proper dental anatomy by candlelight, and he taught me the art of seeing patients as whole, shattered stories. Slowly, he began carving molars with the same care he used to write letters to the families of those he had executed. He confessed that every wooden tooth he shaped was a silent apology to the universe for the lives his hands had taken. One evening, a young cowboy rode in with a jaw so broken he could only drink broth, and I knew I needed help. Jeremiah crafted a splint from flexible willow, and together we wired the boy's jaw, our hands working in unspoken, perfect tandem. Afterward, I kissed him behind the extraction screen, and he tasted like pine shavings and the first hope of a resurrected man. The town council voted to ban dental carving by the hangman, calling it morbid, and the poor gathered in protest outside. Old Widow Peters stood up and removed her carved teeth, declaring, "These are the only Christian things Jeremiah Creed ever made possible." The ban was overturned by sunset, and I saw my hangman swipe at his eyes with a curled wood shaving sticking to his sleeve. On a bright September morning, he knelt beside my dental chair and opened a tiny box of polished walnut holding etched denture teeth. He said, "I want to carve a whole new life with you, Edie, one where I only fix things that can still smile." I pulled him into the chair and kissed every knuckle. Then I extracted all the poison of his past with my tears. We were married in that same saloon, and the rancher with carved teeth read scripture from a Bible Jeremiah had built a wooden cover for. Our honeymoon was a circuit of mining camps where I repaired shattered mouths and he carved replacement teeth under a canvas roof. At each camp, he told the story of his greatest shame, and each telling carved away another splinter of his own self-hatred. He now carves his teeth with a tiny J on the back, and folks consider them luckier than any store-bought porcelain ever made. I became pregnant during a thunderous stampede night, and he delivered our son Moses himself, his hands steady as carved cedar finally at peace. Moses grew up with a wooden rattle shaped like a molar, and his first word was Papa, spoken to a man finally able to smile. Jeremiah now teaches a workshop for former soldiers who need handcrafting skills after war, and they carve wooden teeth for reservation clinics. Our daughter Hope was born without a cleft, but she inherited her father's gentle intensity and her mother's need to fix hurting things. Last week, an old retired judge arrived, the very one who signed the pardon that arrived too late, and Jeremiah fed him supper calmly. That night, in the shed, he carved a perfect set of teeth for the judge's dying wife, and forgiveness was sealed in walnut grain. I still practice dentistry, and my husband still makes teeth, but now he also makes tiny wooden hearts for every newborn in town. He says that carving a heart reminds him that every tool can be turned to creation if the hands holding it decide to change. Western Old Stories official shared this story, and soon letters poured from Hangman and healers everywhere, asking for Jeremy's carved tooth method guide. We printed a pamphlet with diagrams, and now lepers colonies, orphanages, and reservations receive sets of teeth carved by redeemed, steady hands. Last Sunday, Jeremy stood in the church and read aloud his own testimony. His voice no longer the hangman's, but the healer's finally. I watched him smile fully, and I realized that love is simply what happens when two people pull the rod out of life together. Our children will inherit not a gallows, but a workshop full of walnut dust, tiny files, and the scent of 1,000 redeemed promises. West Old Stories official now calls this story the most shared romance we ever aired, proving that even hangmen can carve themselves into saints.